other people to join the movement. And then once other people join the movement, then politicians will listen for votes, and then corporations may be forced to listen, either because the politicians impose rules or regulations that will force the corporations to listen, or maybe the corporations will listen because they're scared about losing business. This is one of the things that you see a little bit with Bank of America had decided they were going to impose a $5 per monthly fee on debit cards, and then and there was a movement basically to say, well, let's leave this, and then you're going to see that other banks didn't go along, and Bank of America kind of backed away from that idea. So I think it's just intended mostly to draw the attention of everyday people in society. Is this something that they'd want to join or not? It's not clear what the movement means for big business. I'll start over. So it's not clear exactly what the movement means for big business. I bet most big businesses would just hope it would go away. And they are probably, to be quite honest, not really reacting too much. If it's just a group of people protesting and that's it, I think they're just going to ignore it and will try to ignore it. I think that'd probably be in their best interest to ignore it. One of the questions would be is if the movement sort of gets legs, does it continue to grow? And then the businesses start to think, well, wait a minute, there's going to be more regulations that are coming down on us from the government, maybe to dictate how we can behave in certain areas. That's going to matter. And then the other thing too is if the perception is out there that it's big businesses who are gaining at the expense of everybody else, then they need to be aware, and they're going to be influenced a little bit to try to counteract this opinion. So maybe go on a PR front to say, well, this isn't exactly the case. But as it is right now, I'm not sure that there's really a whole lot of influence. Could there be an influence later on in the future? If the movement continues to grow and people join with it, then I think big businesses are going to have to take notice. But to be quite honest, right now, I think that they're not overly concerned with what actually is happening right now. It's just they might be a little bit concerned about where it might go in the future. I don't know if the movement will have a long effect, and I'm not sure that anyone does. It's just a matter of, do people, I think one of the problems that the Occupy Wall Street movement has is there's no clear message. I think when it was originally started out, the idea was that there's too much money involved in politics, and this was sort of the strong theme that was there. And I think many people could look at this and maybe say, I agree with this. And they look at what happened with, say, the financial bailouts that happened in 2008, where you bailed out the financial sector. And as an economist, I thought that was probably the right thing that had to be done, was to bail them out. Now the question is, what's happened in the meantime? Have they paid a penalty? I mean, you look at what the financial sector did, and it really did devastate the economy. But it seems like the people who caused this to happen have basically walked away in general scot-free and with no repercussions to them. And I think many people look and say, well, that's not quite fair. And I think that's where the movement seemed to start. But it's become much more broad. And in some sense, it's not clear exactly what the central theme of the movement is anymore. And from that point of view, you bring in other issues that maybe other people don't necessarily support. So if I think, I support the idea that we're going to go after the financial sector, that's fine. But if you bring in other issues that maybe people don't support, then they might not want to join it because they're scared they're going to be lumped in with everybody else. And so I think this is one of the things I don't know what's going to happen. If it's portrayed, and I know there's been at least some attempts maybe to portray these sort of the crazy people, stuff like that. Well, if that's the case, nobody wants to join a movement of crazy people. But if it's perceived as being a legitimate movement, then other people might join in. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. Sort of the perception is the reality. And if people perceive that this is a legitimate complaint and it's something that is being conducted by reasonable people who have reasonable solutions to the problems, then I think it'll gain movement and continue to grow. I'm not sure if that's where it is right now. As an economist, I think I definitely can understand why the protests are there. If you look at the way that society has changed, I think it is clear that not everybody is sharing broadly in the economic growth we've had over the last 3 decades. And the question is, are we playing? Is this a fair game that we're playing? Do they have a chance, or at least a reasonable chance, to do well in society? And if people don't think they have a reasonable chance, or if they don't, if they don't have a reasonable chance, or they don't think they have a reasonable chance, then people are going to be upset about this. So I understand that part of the movement. Again, there's other things in part of the movement where it's not exactly clear what they're going for. And from that, I think that actually detracts from sort of this central theme, which I think many people could associate themselves with and say, I agree with that. I want it to be a fair playing field. But then when you move into the notion where if it's just a general attack on capitalism in general, an attack on markets, that markets never work, well, I think they're going to lose a lot of people there. Because then the question is, well, do you go to socialism, something like that? And you're going to look at the experience and say, well, that's not something we really want, but do we want a more fair, more level playing field within the bounds of capitalism? I think that's something that more broadly could be shared by many people in society, as opposed to some of the more out there or more controversial, more radical opinions.
I think that's everything.
Okay, yeah.
So much.